I thought this project would be a simple, painted refurbishment of a classic mid-century dresser. Then the project almost unraveled right before my eyes, and because of my own actions. Thankfully, after several repairs and major reconstruction, the project turned out better than I ever could have hoped. Along the way today, I'll teach you how to achieve a smooth and professional painted finish to your projects, including how to use a sprayer correctly. At the end, I'll teach you how to open up a bulky mid-century dresser by adding feet, even though that was never in my plans. Let's go learn some things together.
I bought this piece off Facebook Marketplace, like any ambitious furniture flipper would. And I loved it because of its wavy contour drawers and also its original finishings that were really pretty, but it has a ton of damage to the veneer. You can see there, veneer's been chipped, it's been rubbed raw, and it's going to take a lot of repairs. And to do those repairs, the best place to start is cleaning. I like using Simple Green cleaning solution first, not just to clean the piece, but also to get to know the piece. Because you can start to see how the piece works, you can get to know the repairs a little bit better and start to get to know it. And I think that's actually important and one of the primary reasons I like to clean. Also, it lets you find pieces of tape, like this one that I had to scrape off with a scraper. And that is the best way to remove tape, in my opinion, if you plan to paint the piece, not if you plan to stain the piece, because scrapers can cause really hard reverse damage. This is Bondo's all-purpose putty, which is my go-to filler in a project like this. Bondo also makes a wood filler product that's a color that's closer to wood. For this one, since we're going to paint it, it doesn't really matter what the color is underneath the paint, so I'm using the all-purpose putty. To get it activated though, so it can set within the 10-minute set time that it takes, you have to add that hardener. That's what I'm mixing in there. Once you've got it mixed, I apply with a plastic putty knife. And as you can see, I'm having a little bit of difficulty at that angle, getting it to feel fully in, and this just takes finesse. You got to do it multiple rounds, oftentimes, and that's what it took for this particular job. Ended up needing to do that across several locations, which you're about to see here. You can see the spots in the bottom left where the putty is, across the trim in both locations on the front. So what I'm doing is going through and smoothing out that putty, but I'm also sanding the entire piece, letting it adhere to the incoming primer paint I'm about to use. This is an up-close view of what it looks like when you do fill in the putty to the rest of the piece. And as you can see, we're starting to make some progress. It's starting to look really smooth, even though you can't see it from my camera angle there. But once we get some paint on that, nobody's ever going to be able to tell that that veneer chipped. As I was sanding down the piece, getting ready for painting, I leaned it back, and guess what happened? This particle board here disintegrated. So you see that? Yeah, not good. I was thinking this piece was a little too bulky anyway. This piece just got fun because we're about to remove this entire bottom section, and including here on this side panel. Tough angle, all right, give me a break. Finally, using our old piece of wood here to mark the cut for the jigsaw. Okay, get a new edge. See that veneer? It did raise up a little bit, so we're gonna have to put some wood filler there, but it should look pretty good by the time we're done with it. Decided to sand it down instead. Let's see what it looks like once we got some paint on it. If you're going to end up with a professional finish to your paint job, it's all because of your preparation. I've already used 150 grit sandpaper and 220 grit sandpaper to get a smooth finish. Now I'm removing any dust and particles with a tack cloth before I start painting. And this is the primer. I use a Bin 123 product. It's in gray. I really like this. It dries quickly. It lays smooth. I'm using my Home Right sprayer, which has several different nozzles that let you control the flow of the spray. Later in the video, whenever I put the final coat on, I'll walk you through spraying technique and the basics there. Can't take myself seriously with this hat on. But while we're waiting on that primer to dry, what we're gonna do is take these old drawer pulls, we're gonna score them. We're just gonna scratch them up a little bit to let the new coat of gold paint really adhere. So I'm gonna do that next, and then we're gonna go back and get to work on that dresser some more. Note, earlier when I talked about sanding down the dresser directly, I used 150 grit sandpaper first and then 225 grit. Now that I have the primer on the piece, I'm using 400 grit sandpaper before I put on the first of the final coats. So here we go. Now we're talking spraying technique. Okay, whenever you're spraying across the piece, you always want to start outside the drawers and then smoothly come across in overlapping sprays, finishing again outside the drawers so your paint doesn't bead up and become too heavy at the very end. People sometimes wonder why I have a tent. This is exactly why. Because we just had a thunderstorm pop up, erupt. Thankfully, the dresser was covered, but we did incur some slight damage at the bottom. There were some drips that came right on after the end of that coat. So I'm gonna have to sand that and then repaint it, but we should be good. Got my first coat on. We just watched that. About to use 400 grit sandpaper to smooth it out. And then before I put the final coat on, I'm gonna come back through with 600 grit paper to make it really smooth. The sprayer doesn't paint everything though, so at the very end of the project, I usually have to touch up the tops of the drawers and the sides just to make the color look uniform. The paint I use today is in the Emerald line from Sherwin-Williams. It's an awesome paint. It has a built-in urethane, it's enamel, it's protective, it lays flat. Here on the bottom of the dresser, there's not anywhere that I could mount the feet. It's gonna be solid. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a piece of a 2x4 that I just cut. We're gonna install it right there. Then we're also gonna take another 2x4, install it right there. I could have used this 1x4 here, but I'm not gonna do that because I want my feet to actually show whenever you look at it from a side profile view. And it wouldn't have done that with the 1x4, it would have disappeared in there. Thankfully, laying around, I had a set of angled mid-century feet. You saw me painting those gold earlier, and here I'm putting them to a new base. Next, I am reinstalling those newly painted finishings.
And that dresser is done. Ultimately, it took a lot longer to get it done than I expected, which is always to be expected. But the result, especially the paint job and the addition of those mid-century angled feet, I'm really satisfied with. If you'd like to catch my next restoration project, be sure to subscribe to my channel. See you next time.